Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
With the Brewers falling to the Tampa Bay Rays over the weekend, just one win in this three-game series that came yesterday to avoid the sweep. Let's go back to Friday. Close games, one run losses. Again, that's kind of been a theme here for the Brewers, and a lot of their losses so far this season's been by a run and such. But Brewers, going back to Friday with Quintana on the mound, going 5 1/3, giving up 5 hits, just one earned run, but 3 runs total. Brewers, again, 3 errors in the contest on Friday night. But dropping that game after a nice, I would say, a quality start from Quintana, especially considering the start he had against the Cubbies the night prior. But the Brewers jumped out to a 1-0 lead in the first. Able to take the lead again in the fourth. Able to take the lead again in the eighth. But can't, tied it up in the eighth, not taking the lead, but tied it up in the eighth. But every time the Brewers made them like a little bit of a lead, or at least tied it up, the Rays always had an answer for the Brewers on Friday night's game. So they dropped the opener, and then on Saturday, that game that Tobias Myers, it kind of sealed his, I shouldn't say sealed because it makes it sound like it's a forever thing, but, with the start that Tobias had on Saturday, Matt Arnold and the Brewers deciding to send him down to the minors here, but that 4-3 loss for the Brewers, on Saturday, where we saw, 3-2 loss for the Brewers on Saturday. Tobias Myers went 4 innings, giving up 2 earned runs, but again, it's the command and it's the control of his pitches. In just 4 innings, he pitched 75 pitches and issued 3 walks. So while it was only 3 hits and 2 earned runs, again, it's kind of the control and the command that Tobias Myers, in a couple of his other starts, his first couple starts of the season, that he's had some issues with. And they popped up again in this start. Couldn't put together back-to-back solid starts for him. So with the Brewers maybe needing some more pitchers coming up. I know we're going to get to Brandon Woodruff coming up here in just a little bit. But Brewers not really satisfied with what they have seen from Tobias Myers so far this season. And hoping that a AAA, a minor league stints may do them a little bit well. They want some more consistency. They're looking for more consistency from Tobias Myers, and also let's be real here too. It's a little bit of a roster manipulation sort of thing. They eventually need a roster spot. So when you look at his numbers so far in his 4 starts, 1-0 with a 3.86 ERA. It's not the worst thing we've seen from starting pitchers, but I think it's a combination of, looking for that consistency, looking for some better control and command from his pitches, but also the need of bringing in that roster spot. So it stinks. It sucks. It's not the 2025 season that we all envisioned, or even the Brewers or Tobias Myers envisioned for him to begin this season, but it is what it is right now. And hopefully, maybe a quick, I honestly don't feel like it's going to be a long stint, but could be wrong. But hopefully, he's able to work on some of those issues at the AAA level. And when he does get called back, when he does get back on that Major League Ball club, maybe we will see a Tobias Myers that we saw last year, where June onward, he was the best pitcher of this team. MVP, pitching MVP for this team last year. That's the expectation that we should all have for Tobias Myers. That's the expectation that the Brewers have for him, and that should be the expectation that Tobias Myers has on himself, too. We saw what he was able to do last year. We saw that. We know what he's capable of. And he's not quite to that level this year so far. And hopefully, again, that this stint at the minor league level, however long it's going to be, I personally feel like it's not going to be too long, maybe a couple games or such, but hopefully this can get him, back to maybe working on some of the issues that he's having, so that when he is called back up to that major league level, that we get to see the version that we saw last year. And then you factor it into, they're going to eventually have this surplus of guys, of starters within this rotation. One of them is going to be Brandon Woodruff. Another one's going to be Aaron Savali, who's going to be coming back here soon. They're going to have these surplus of guys. Aaron Ashby is coming back here soon, too. He's probably going to be more out of the bullpen, your long relief options. I still expect to see Jacob Mizorowski at some point this season. For the way that he has been pitching at the minor league level, he is pitching like a guy that deserves to be pitching at a major league level, getting a shot this year. We're probably going to see Logan Henderson again this year. Chad Patrick's been pitching well. So it's a good kind of problem to have all these guys. I still feel like, especially some of those veterans like an Aaron Savali or a Nestor Cortez, I feel like those guys could potentially be trade candidates for the Brewers before the deadline, because contending teams, every team is looking for veteran starting pitching before the trade deadline to gear up for a postseason run, right? Well, you got the Brewers with some plethora of pitching options, especially when it comes to their young guys. So I would feel like it's Nestor Cortez and Aaron Savali who are probably at the top of that list of guys that maybe the Brewers would like to trade to try to get something back in return, especially a guy like, Nestor Cortez, who they're probably not going to bring back. Excuse me. Probably bring back next year. Aaron Savali, same thing, I would imagine. So maybe get a little bit of something in return for him. But yesterday's game, then for the Brewers, avoiding the sweep, their lone win of this series, luckily coming on Mother's Day. Seems like the Brewers always, I would have to look up the actual numbers and such, but sure seems like the Brewers, they like playing on Mother's Day. They usually, seems like they usually have some success. Obviously the Bill Hall was like Mr. Mother's Day back in the early 2000s, and of course Freddie Peralta, which is actually the anniversary is tomorrow, but Freddie Peralta making his major league debut in Colorado against the Rockies on Mother's Day, double-digit strikeouts and such. But a 4-2 victory yesterday for the Crew, where we saw Yelich picking up a home run, Contreras also picking up a home run, Yelich collecting a couple hits yesterday. Chad Patrick going 4 1/3, 6 hits, a couple earned runs, 4 Ks for him. His ERA is now at a 3.19. Alexander, though, gets credited with the win, and Trevor McGill picking up his 5th save of the season. So, Brewers now will continue their road trip. They're going to be going up against the Guardians starting tonight. It's a little bit of an earlier game, 5:10 first pitch. In your pitching matchups, you're going to have Freddie Peralta going tonight for the Crew. Quinn Priester is going to get to start tomorrow for the Brewers, and then on Wednesday, Quintana is going to get to start before they get the off day on Thursday and return home to face the Minnesota Twins, our friends from across the border, coming over for a weekend series. So, but with tonight's game, Freddie Peralta, his start getting pushed back by a couple days because he's been dealing with that groin injury. So, Brewers just pushing back his start and try to get him as healthy as possible. Is slated to get started. Looking for his 5th win tonight. So far this season, 4-2 with a 2.18 ERA. He's got a little bit of experience going up against some of these hitters within this Cleveland lineup. Looks like some guys have a couple games worth of experience. Kwan's got 6 at-bats, but he's just 167 hitter against him. Santana, 8 at-bats, 250 against him. So not a ton of success going up against Freddie Peralta. Then on the flip side, Ben Lively, who's 2-2 with a 3.46 ERA for the Guardians. You got some guys who have quite a bit of experience going up against Ben Lively, and that could be, he spent some time with Cincinnati earlier on in his career, was with Philadelphia and such. But you look at Contreras, who has 11 career at-bats against him, but just 182. Bryce Terang, also 11 career at-bats against him, 273. The guy who has had some really darn good success against him throughout his career, had 14 at-bats, has been Christian Yelich. 14 at-bats, including a home run, 357 average against him with a 1.186 OPS. And honestly, too, Andrew Monasterio, who was called up over the weekend, hitting 400 against him, too, with a home run. But, Yelich, obviously the guy that has the most experience going up against him, and that 357 average and a 1.186, definitely expecting a night for Christian Yelich. Got to have him tonight. No question about it. When you look at Ben, too, he's coming off of a win against Washington back on the 6th, where he pitched 5 1/3, just giving up 1 earned run on a couple of hits, struck out 3, and then he's got a couple of no decisions on there, too. Back on the 1st against the Twinnies when he went 5 2/3, 5 hits, no earned runs. Boston, back on the 26th, he went 5 innings and 4 earned runs and another no decision for him. So that's kind of your pitching matchup for tonight's game. And then, of course, Freddie Peralta, when we look at him, he's coming off of back-to-back wins. Cubbies picking up a win, going 6 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs. White Sox on the 29th, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, and then a loss against the Giants, where he went 5 innings and 3 earned runs. One guy, though, I want to kind of give a tip of the cap to here for the Brewers, because I feel like he's, kind of quietly, especially as of late, been having a really good start to the season, a very solid start to the season. And it was a guy that, in spring training and before the season, I think he was on the list for a lot of Brewers fans saying, we need a step-up season from him. We need to see more from him this year. He's got to help fill the void left by Willy Adames. And while he may not be this big home run threat guy, he doesn't have double-digit home runs. He's not leading the team in home runs. But he's been producing at the plate as of late. And that's Rhys Hoskins. Because when you look at his last 30 games, that you're talking nearly 100 ABs, 100 at-bats. Rhys Hoskins has 4 home runs, 17 RBIs. He's taken 13 walks. He's hitting .306 with an on-base percentage of a .395 and slugging .490. And when you look at what he's doing so far this season, so that's his last 30 games, his last 98 at-bats, and 120 total at-bats so far this season, Rhys Hoskins is hitting .275 with a .380 on-base percentage and an OPS of an .805. Right now, his average is much higher than his career numbers. He's a career .239 hitter, .275 this year. His on-base percentage, .380. He's a career .347. His OPS is still a little bit down. He's a career .826 OPS, but so far this season, .805. So again, while he may not be the monster power number, type of guy, but I think we got to tip our cap to him because he is, I think, kind of maybe a little bit under the radar, unless you've been like daily and just a diehard Brewers fan. Then you probably know that Rhys Hoskins has been playing pretty well so far. But I think, kind of, give him a little bit of a nice tip of the cap here. He finished the month of April hitting .303 with an on-base of a .413, and he's slugging .447. And that's, March was just a couple of games in. He played in 3 of them, but he was only hitting .111 with a .333 on base and .111 slugging. So he had a really, really solid month of April. Now, so far in May, he's averaged .257, .316 on base, slugging .457. So his slugging is actually a little bit up compared to what it was in April at this point. But overall, Rhys Hoskins, I think, is off to a really good start. And I hate to say this. I hate to even think of this at this point. But if we get to that point in July and Brewers fall a little bit down in the standings, we talked about some of the veteran pitchers and such. You kind of have to wonder, would that be a guy that's going to be potentially at a trade market? I hope we're not into that discussion. I hope we're still competing for a playoff spot, and I hope we don't have to have that thought process. But I know he is. I know he is having a very solid season so far, as we are now in the first quarter of the season, right? I mean, we talked about it after this Tampa Bay series. You're talking about a team that's through the first quarter of the season. So they're 20-21. 40 games in. 25.3% of the season is now completed. One quarter of the season is already completed for the Brewers. How would you grade if we did first quarter? How would you grade the first quarter of the season? All right? Teachers, pretend to be a teacher, professors, whatever. How would you grade the first quarter of this Brewer season? And you could factor in injuries to the starters. You could factor in whatever you want. Okay? You are the teacher in this thing. You are the one putting this grade together. You're 3 games back from the Cubs. You're in 3rd place in the division. Cardinals are above you by 2 games. Cardinals played some good baseball right now, 3 games above 500. They're just 1 game back from the Cubs for first place. Reds, half game behind Milwaukee right now. But how would you grade? And if you want, you can do this too. Give me a couple players. Give me some of their individual grades. Okay? Just for a refresher, team leaders, Bryce Terang right now, 296 batting average. Runs scored is Terang. Home runs, Chirio and Yelich, 7 apiece. RBIs, Yelich. Stolen bases, Terang. Pitching, it's Freddie Peralta and Jose with 4 wins. ERA, 2.18 for Freddie Peralta, leading the team. So, overall as a team, what would you grade the Brewers with the first quarter of the season already in the books? It's time to do a little classes in session. We do this a lot when it's the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter of seasons and such. The Brewers now, after this weekend series against Tampa Bay, officially 25.3% of the way through their season. So how would you grade it? All right, team-wise, it's kind of open up to interpretation. Not interpretation, but it's kind of open up to what you want to grade and such. If you want to grade some individual players, you just want to grade the team overall, you want to grade different aspects of it, that's fine. For me personally, if I'm looking at this, and you could grade on a curve if you want to use the injuries as a curve and such. You could do that. All right, there's no real rules to this. And, if you're, kind of put your teacher cap on here for a second, too, if you could give some comments, because everybody who has a kid, or if you remember back in the day when you used to be in school, you may have some teacher comments on a certain class or a certain grade in that, right? So if you want to give some comments about maybe some tips for improvement or some kudos and such, we could do that, too. With that being said, overall team grade for me, I'm going C, which isn't really, digging too deep into it. You're talking about a team that's 1 game under 500. Yes, we could grade on a curve with some of the injuries and such, but what it really kind of brings it down for me is a couple things, but one, the defense overall. The defense overall has been pretty disappointing. You have high standards. When you're a back-to-back team in the last 2 years, back-to-back, overall team defense, overall Gold Glove team defense, and they've struggled this year. And when you got the Platinum Gold Glove winner, you've got Sal Frelick in there. I know Blake Perkins has been missing this season. He's up there too. Great glove. Joey Ortiz has a good glove. But for whatever reason, team defense overall, and this is, for the last couple of years, we have heard this team preach, we're not going to sacrifice offense for defense. They prioritize defense. And so far this year has not been up to that high standard that they set for themselves and that high standard that they have shown over the last couple of seasons. So that's what kind of really brings down the grade for me. If I was just grading defense overall, because I have high standards, because I expect more, I'd probably give it a D. And it might be a little harsh. Maybe a C minus, hovering around C minus, D plus, D, somewhere there. But that's where it's one of those. We all had that class or that teacher that, like 94% to 100's an A. But you get a 93%, it's a B, and it's like, dude, I thought 90 to 100 was an A, but it's those high standards, sort of thing. So it's kind of like that with the defense where, okay, we could say maybe it's like a 73%, but it's actually a D, sort of thing. But I would grade it pretty hard because they should absolutely be better in this department, and they haven't been. Bullpen, you look at that lowers the grade too. Offensively, we can look at a bunch of numbers offensively. That's going to lower the grade too. Overall, I'm probably at like a C for this team. And if we broke it down offensively and defensively and such, it's, that's where a lot of that's going to come. Individual player-wise, I'd probably go... I'd probably give, if I had to give an A to somebody on this ball club right now, I might go Freddie Peralta. He might get my highest grade from this team because I think he's been the most consistent, and I think he's been overall the best player. You could throw Terang in there too, and I wouldn't argue with that too much, if anything. I think the only thing with Terang where I don't know if I'm quite there is, and this is just recency effect, but I know in his last 20 ABs he's kind of been a little quiet. But I think overall, when you factor in Terang, and I think going back to what I've kind of said too, he's gone up against a lot of left-handed pitching, and overall so far this year, 296 with 3 home runs, and on base with 370 and his OPS of 750. Yeah, I think I'd probably go Terang A too. I think Terang and Peralta would probably be my two guys that would get the highest marks. Nick Mears I'd throw into that conversation too because Nick Mears has been thrown into some high leverage situations coming out of the bullpen, and he's done well. He's done well in those situations, in those tight spots. So those would probably, I'm just going off the top of my head, probably be my 3 highest graded players so far. Yelich, he's got 7 home runs, tied for the team lead, 208 batting average. But he's just slugging 375, and his OPS is at 678. So where do you balance that? Okay, great. He's tied for the team lead in home runs. But has he been able to do a whole lot after that? He's definitely not playing at the level that he was last year when he was a starter in the All-Star team and batting over 300 in that. So I'm probably looking at a D plus for Christian Yelich. Maybe a C minus. Rhys Hoskins, I'm probably putting at a B. We were just talking about Rhys Hoskins. I'm probably putting at a B plus for him. Yes, would like to see maybe a little bit more power, but when you look at his numbers career-wise, he's not a consistent dude that's going to get you 30-plus, 40-plus home runs in a season. So I'm probably at like B plus for Rhys Hoskins. He would be up there close to Terang and Mears and Peralta for my high grades. Contreras, okay, how much do you factor in the broken finger in terms of is that what is affecting his production so far? Because offensively, he's not at the level that he was last year. He's hitting 237, and on base with 350, OPS with 691, slugging 341. Right now, I'm probably at a C for Contreras. Jackson Chourio, what about the young stud? Tied for the team lead in home runs with 7. Overall, he's hitting 260, but his on base is 275. The thing is like, does he need to be more patient at the plate? Does he need to take some more walks? He's slugging a 468. His OPS is a 743. But right now, that on-base percentage is down from his career numbers. He's a career 315 in that very small sample size of a career. But again, high expectations for Jackson Chourio, right? And you look at it, recently, his last 64 at-bats, he is hitting 281. But again, it's that on-base percentage. So I'm maybe at about a B- for Jackson Chourio, and where I think he gets extra credit points, if you will, has been his defensive play. His defensive play has improved leaps and bounds from last year. Where at this point last year, we're talking about a guy who was still adjusting to play the outfield, playing a little too deep because they don't want anything to go over his head, trying to, get used to judging the ball in the air. And there's been issues last year at this point. We were like, oh, should he have dove? Should he have been more aggressive? Why didn't he have a better jump on the ball coming up forward? Too many balls dropping in front of him. Now you're talking about a guy that I think has made major improvements in the defensive department. Now he's getting playing time in center field, for crying out loud. So he gets extra credit points for that. So that's probably where I'm at, like a B- for Jackson Chourio. You'd like to see better offensive numbers, maybe be a little bit more patient at the plate, taking some walks in that. But I think you factor in his defensive play, and that moves up the grade overall for him too. So those are just some of my grades. Overall, team-wise, C. I think it all kind of averages out C, C- here for the Brewers.